Okay, welcome everybody. We have a pretty small, intimate group here, so if there are questions, I think that we can probably take them as they come. I was planning to save time at the end, but we can kind of have a little bit more of a natural flow here. My name is Jill. I uh, came from I was at AWS for a while, and that's where I first started using Docs as code. And um, uh, but I'm currently at Skylight Digital, civic tech that is working with the government to help modernize and build the technology that they use. So I'm working on a project with the United States Centers for Disease Control to work on their disease surveillance system. It's a 20 or 30 years old and needs some updating. So it's a pretty cool project, and I am working with Docs as code at Skylight as well, though I'm a sole writer, so I do have a little flexibility to change that if I would like to move on from there. So I'm not a Docs as code native. I came from using, WordPress back in the day, and then when I moved into tech, I helped design the actual CMS system that we were using, which was, with a WYSIWYG editor, and had a lot of bells and whistles and things to make a writer's life easier. So when I got to AWS, I thought, why are you doing it this way? There are easier ways than Docs as code. There's friendlier tools, but this is where the industry is. And tech companies expect you to know this. So if you're looking to move into the tech industry, or this is kind of baseline for what you should know. So I really hope to kind of make it be not so scary. Um, I'm not here to tell you that Docs as code is the best way to go. The best way to go is what you're comfortable using. Unfortunately, as employees, we don't always have the choices as to what we're using. So um, this presentation really is for beginners, but also people who have been using it and maybe didn't have a formal introduction, want to sharpen some of their experience, sharpen their existing habits. It's not a tutorial. It's more of an overview. I can't keep an eye on comments either. So if you want to unmute, that's fine with me if you have a question. Um, So basically, I just hope that everybody will get familiar with some of the terminology if you're not already. Um, Kind of see that it's not so scary and intimidating to use Docs as code. And I want to share some good habits that I wish I had known sooner, and that I started writing down and reusing and sharing with other people a lot. So what is it? What is Docs as code? So really, the whole goal of Docs as code is having version control to track changes, see who's changing everything, to allow people to work in their own branches, so their own copies of the documentation without stepping on each other, um, and to have control over that process to make sure that we're not overwriting people's work. It also typically has a review process embedded in it. So, before your changes go live, somebody or something would review what you're about to merge into main to make sure that it's not going to break anything, or that it has the correct content. And then there's an automated build component as well. And that just means that when you send your work out to the web, there's a pipeline that automatically builds it and deploys your content. So you're using a lot of the tools that developers use, but you're not developing. And we'll talk a minute about that. And if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat real quick, um, what is your current comfort level here? I can't get Zoom to show me the chat here without. If you can drop that in the chat, that will help me see where we're at here. Okay, I've got a C, a B. Okay. We've got a beginner. That's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing that. Makes sense. Okay, so we're a little across the board. That is helpful. Sorry, I've got to get back to my full screen here. Okay. All right, so let's talk about the stack. The stack is it's a word I hear all the time, and I just think it's people just want to like it just sounds cool to be like, what's your stack, right? So, really all the stack is just the set of tools that you use from end to author and publish content. So, the core components of the stack are um, you've got a version control tool, and that's Git. That's what Git is. And it's important to know that Git isn't GitHub. Um, GitHub the is a program that you can use. It kind of is lays over top of Git. Git is what you're typing and using for the version control in the command line. And then GitHub is the hosting platform. So that's where all of your files live that contain your documentation. You then have a markup language, and that's basically just how you write what you want, what you want your documentation to say. That's the language that you use. The build tool turns your files, the source files in the that you wrote in markup language, into a website, and that's typically automated. And oh, sorry, I skipped over the text editor IDE. That's where you write your markup. So at Amazon, we used Oxygen, and you could switch between a code view and an author view where you can kind of see a preview of what it might look like formatted. So there's different tools that kind of reduce that learning curve a little bit. Um, and then finally, you have a pipeline that's going to automate everything whenever you build your website and then send it out to deploy it out into the world. And some common examples of every tool are here. And, it's important to know that what's not important to know is how they work. Just what each does, and that you typically have a separate tool for each step in the Docs code workflow. Some example stacks. So probably one of the simplest ones is to use GitHub and write your content in Markdown. You can even write it directly into GitHub if you want to. In their UI allows you to edit files there. A lot of people are familiar with VS Code. That's a pretty common tool for writing the Markdown. You can also preview formatted there, not what it will look like necessarily on the web, but at least with the headers and formatting intact. Um, and then GitHub has its own build tool built in that's GitHub Action so that you can send that out to the web. The enterprise structure, that's more like what I had at AWS. We had our own version of GitHub that we built and we used internally. It was called Git Farm. And we had a custom build system and an internal pipeline that we used as well there. So these are just some different examples. I haven't ever, I don't know of any companies that do this, but I hear that some companies actually, they have their developer docs, excuse me, in the same like repo as their code. Um, so that's a possibility too. So you would actually be working alongside the engineers, coordinating pushes and pulls. But I think most places now have separate repos for the docs and for the code base itself for the product. Okay, so here's what we care about. We're writers. The Basically, you're going to get to track changes. You're going to see who changed what when forever. It never goes away. It saves every history. It saves every commit, which is like a save. Um, so your branch is your personal copy of the main code base of the documentation. So you've got the docs, they live in files that are published to the web. You snap a copy of those and you store those locally on your computer, and that is your feature branch. That's your personal branch. You can do whatever you want with it as long as, it stays on your computer. When you change something written in your branch, you want to occasionally create a commit. And that would be at a logical place that you would save it where oh, I just finished a chunk of something. This is a natural breaking point. And that's a place where you can give it a nice descriptive name that you can find later. And basically just preserve that and move on to the next thing you want to do. And the reason you want to do commits in those chunks like that is because if you make a mistake in the work you're doing and you want to go back, you're going to have to go back to the last commit that you made. So you don't want to just work, find out you made a mistake, and then you're going to have a really hard time picking out the bad part from all of the work that you did. Instead, you can have smaller commits that you can that they call cherry pick back to. Pull requests are another concept that most that you should be familiar with, and that's basically sending a bundle of your commits or the state of the docs that you have, which is typically, all the commits you've made up to a point where you think it's ready to go. You send it out to the repo, but you don't merge it into the main branch, and you ask somebody to review it excuse me, before you and approve it before it merges in, and that's to catch anything wonky. And then when you're ready, you would actually merge your feature branch into the main documentation branch. And that is a process in and of itself where it's going to check and see if there are any conflicts. So, did something change in the main branch before you merged your stuff in and you're both changing the same files now? Then it will prompt you to try to figure that out.
Do you have to often roll back those changes, and is it difficult?
No. I mean, rollback. So
If you,
rolling back
yeah,
a commit, no, I would say very infrequently. Um, I guess it would depend on the person. But personally, it's not very common, but when it is, it's usually high stakes or high stress moment. Um, if a pull request, that's kind of where you would want the iteration to occur before you do any merging. Um, Typically, you can change what you have without rolling everything back.
cool.
Um, Merge conflicts, on the other hand, those can happen often. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when you have a lot of writers working in a branch at the same, or working in a repo at the same time. There's a lot of potential for conflict. So it takes real coordination and some good habits to make sure that you are minimizing the risk for conflicts. And when they do occur, they're minor enough that they're quick to resolve. So the typical day for a writer working in Docs as code, the morning sync, that's not a meeting, that's synchronizing your work, your feature branches that you have on your computer that you've been working on with any changes that might have happened to main while you are away. So you're going to run a git command in the command line called git pull, and that we're going to switch to the main branch first. You're going to pull whatever changes might have happened to main. Hopefully it says nothing because that's always a good feeling. But if there are changes that you've now pulled in, then you're going to switch back to your feature branch and you're going to merge the main branch changes into your feature branch. And you want to make sure that you're synchronizing and that you're keeping up to date with that to minimize those merge conflicts later. Um, you're going to create a new branch for something that you're working on new. You're going to have a uh, standard naming convention for your branches that you and your team are all respecting and using. And that makes it super easy for you to remember which branch contains what work and who that branch belongs to. So, I would have a branch with all my branches would start with JS, and this is not universal. This is my preferred branch naming strategy with the teams that have worked with. But, your initials up front, and then a descriptive word that describes the feature or the project, and maybe even the ticket number after that as well, if we have a Jira ticket that's associated with it or whatever your system is. Those are the things that are going to make it easy to identify for you what you've been working on and what you want to switch to next. Then you're going to write, and then you're going to commit, and then you're going to write some more, and maybe you'll commit some more, and maybe you'll switch to another branch and you'll um, work on a different project for a little bit while you're waiting on an answer to a question. You're going to continue, if you have a busy repo, pulling from main throughout the day and keeping your active branches up to date. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but and then when your work is ready and you're happy with it, you're going to push it to the repo. You're going to request somebody to review it through a pull request. You'll incorporate feedback. You might have to iterate this step a few times of going back, writing, committing, uh, pushing, requesting the new review. And once your review is approved, you will merge your branch into main. A little bit more goes into that, but and then you're going to clean up after yourself so that you have a nice clean repo that doesn't have old branches that you've already merged into the main branch. Scary? Yeah. I wasn't sure where to put this in here, but this is my cheat sheet. You know, the day you start you start Docs's code, I bet you started making a little cheat sheet. So I'm here to say formalize that. Don't have a messy notes thing somewhere. You should have a cheat sheet and you should have it forever. And you should edit it and keep it up to date. And as you learn things or decide that you like the way that you're doing things now, the best way to do things is the way that works for you and the way that you will remember to do them. And so go out, you can find a cheat sheet online, you can copy my cheat sheet, but no one cheat sheet is going to be the one that's best for you. It's what you become comfortable with, uh, specific to your workflows, and you're going to look at it constantly. I meant to blur out the bad word on there. I apologize. Um, but this is really what the commands look like. If you haven't done Docs's code, I know we have at least one beginner here, you're starting your new work. Oh, excuse me. You're going to check out the main branch. You're going to pull the changes from the main branch in. Then you're going to check out a new copy of main. Check out -B means going to create a new copy of main um, that I want to start working on. So these are all the commands that you do. Adding means you're going to add the files to that you've changed to the stage. I'm probably not even saying this right, to the staged area where, so that you can commit them and push them out to the repo. So these are the basic commands, but also kind of the workflow commands. So I just wanted to share that a little bit, that everybody needs a cheat sheet. So if you take nothing else from this, make a cheat sheet. I'll take a breather. Any questions, or is there anything you have questions about? Okay. All right. So this is the most useful part here. If you already know docs as code, these are my 5 rules. They aren't uh, earth-shattering. I don't think they should surprise anybody. The first and biggest rule of working in docs as code and working in Git is that you never commit directly to main. You always have a copy of the main branch, your feature branch, and that's where you're making your commits. Um,
Does that cause confusion? Trying to remember which branches you need and keep the main one up to date. Now you create a new one, or you create a new one 15 minutes before the last one was merged into main. Do you know what I mean? There's just, in my experience, there tends to be a lot of discussion that has to happen at that point, and conflicts where you have to remind each other, don't forget to pull in the most recent changes, or remind yourself.
yeah, so typically there will be uh, so there are 2 things at play there. One is your own managing your own workspace, and the other is working with collaborators, um, people who are also working in the same repo. So when you have a team of people doing different work in the same repo, you'll establish some best practices in your Slack channel where you all live, to uh, warn people like, hey, I'm going to merge. Please, everybody stay out. Or you will say, that you've just made a change and you're done and you need everybody to pull your changes before they go on. So announcements like that are courteous. Um, I had something that was a lot of fun on one team I worked with. We called it the build parrot, which was kind of like a talking stick, but basically it was a Slack workflow that, um, when you clicked on the button in Slack, it would put an automated message out that says, Jill now has the build parrot. And it was just because it was the party parrot emoji. And if somebody was holding the build parrot, everybody on the team knew that somebody was going to be merging their work into main. And that can take a while because if you have different if it takes a long time to build and you have to wait and you need to verify your changes. So that build parrot maintains active until the person who's merging has completely merged everything, confirmed it all looks good, and they're all done. And they click release the parrot, and now nobody's holding the parrot anymore. And when you click release the parrot, it would warn everybody, please pull Jill's changes, into your branches now. So that was always fun to see the parrot come up. As far as managing your own work and your own branches, that's why it's really important to have descriptive branch names and to delete your branches after you've merged them to main. And that will reduce the number of branches that you are juggling at a time. And you just go to the command line and type in git branch, and that will show you the list of all of the branches that you have at that moment. And that's something you probably run a lot throughout the day, to remind yourself what you're even doing. So git branch, git status, to remember which branch you're on, or if you have work that you haven't committed yet. Those are the easy ways to keep yourself sane. That answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, sorry it took me so long to hit that mute button. Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay. Um, The second rule, pool frequently. So this is what I had touched on earlier, that small small pools into your branch are really going, if you wait a long time and 10 writers before you have merged something into main, they've probably now edited something that you are working, a page that you're also working on, and you're going to end up pulling in a big, massive set of changes and have multiple conflicts that you have to try to resolve and decide if you should keep your changes or their changes or where the conflict even exists. Resolve conflicts carefully. And this is so important. Seen, I've managed teams of writers using Docs as code as large as 13 writers, all in the same repo. And I've managed uh, smaller teams as well. And no matter what, somebody will accept their changes over everybody, over any, when there's a conflict, no matter what. And you can't do that. If there is a conflict, you have to talk to the other person if you can't figure it out yourself, which changes to preserve. Sometimes your branch has changes in it that somebody else made. It's not even your work that's conflicting with the work that somebody else merged in. So just talk to other people, think. Um, Nobody wants to get a product manager reaching out to them to ask why their docs are gone, and you find out that somebody quickly resolved a merge conflict by just accepting their changes, and it resulted in deleting an entire piece of work. Luckily, version control, so it can be restored, but somebody has to realize it's gone first. Number four, follow the pull request workflow. So even if you're not working with a team of writers, don't have, right now I'm a sole writer. I still respect the pull request workflow. I create a pull request and I look it over myself, and I frequently catch something at that point. So it's good to look at the diff. It shows a lot of tools in the pull request. It will show you the file diff, and you can give it a scan, make sure everything looks good before you merge. Keep yourself honest. And number five, really important, searchable commit messages. You are going to want to find a change that you made later. Oh, excuse me. The commit bad messages on the left, these are real, these are common, these are the ones I see all the time. Fixes, fixes, fixes. That is such a common commit message. Don't do that. Later you're gonna say, somebody's gonna say, why did you update these IAM examples, or who updated these IAM examples, or whatever it is, and you're going to want to have words that you can search through your history of commits and try to find that later. So you'll be happy you did. Okay, getting there. Okay, we're about halfway. I probably have about 10 more minutes, I'd say. So hang in there with me. I know it's a Friday. All right, some gotchas. So every repo has, or could have, a git ignore file. So you want to make sure that your file browser on your computer is showing hidden files, because if it's not, and you can Google that, I don't remember the command for the different operating systems, but by default, your computer won't show the hidden files in your file navigator. So the git ignore basically tells that's in your repo for your um, somebody else can probably explain this better, but it tells Git which files and which, like, actual files in the repo not to track or commit. So you
Can I add
might
context?
yeah, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
When I'm doing development, very often you have to download a lot of libraries and different things for your code to reference. And that could be thousands of files in one folder. And there's no reason to upload that to the repository for everybody with all those thousands of files because we all know that we have those files on our machines already. Whenever we configure or whatever, those files are part of it. So they don't have to be part of the application or what we're writing. They just have to be present. And we usually cover that in like a git ignore or other ways, or I'm sorry, in a README or other ways to let the developers know these are the things you're going to need. Don't forget to run this command, but don't fill up the repo with thousands and thousands of files. Does
Yeah,
that help?
great example.
Yeah, and if I could add to that too, sometimes your local editor will add temporary files,
That's
which
right.
it needs to operate, but you don't want to include in the repo. And also, this way you can leave notes for yourself in that directory and not have them become part of the repo also. So it's pretty convenient when used intentionally.
Absolutely. And one other really big important thing that you can do with it is that's where how you can save your environment variables. For example, my API key for, I don't know, Google Gemini in my code is going to, I don't want everybody else to use it. So I don't want to upload that to GitHub and let everybody see what my API key is. So I will just upload a sample env file and the instructions will tell you developers, don't forget to create an env file with all of your passwords and API keys.
Yeah.
Big security risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
A lovely thing, just a little anecdotal thing. If you do accidentally put like an API key out there, in particular for GitHub, GitHub actually told me, "Hey, we found one of your API keys was exposed." It was like 10 seconds after I did it, and that was a really cool thing because that meant I didn't know that I made that mistake, but it found it for me, didn't allow me, so I was able to cancel all that and fix everything.
That actually happened to
And
me recently too, but it wasn't really an API key. It was okay, but it kept warning me and it
Yeah.
kept scaring me.
Oh yeah,
I,
it's a terrifying alert.
along those lines, I'll say this is something I've been discovering using my own GitHub repo. That even if you commit something you don't want to, and now it's in the history, you can edit the history after the fact.
That's true.
Um, so you can clean that up. So that's a nice thing to have there. Um, one other thing, just in the gotcha section, is sometimes I've found that the development team is not having the same level of hygiene I have. So I will be pulling from their main branch to make edits, and that main branch could include things that aren't ready for release yet without telling me. So if you are in a space where you're working with multiple people, make sure that they have the same kind of hygiene that you have, so you aren't incorporating their mistakes into what you think is correct.
Yeah. All great tips. Thank you. Yeah, and some of those when it comes to the git ignore, Michael's example with the library, that's going to be more developer focused. I think the more writer focused example is the those build artifacts that your computer automatically puts in. Those are the ones I'm usually trying to ignore. There's like a DS store file that I think a Mac OS always puts in. So if you don't add those to your git ignore, you end up committing them to the repo, and then it makes it look really messy whenever you see all those files in there.
Those DS store files have been popping up for me for 20 years. They just
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah, there's going to be a better way. So so I won't read it to you here these, but the platform features don't transfer. Just to keep in mind that if you're using GitHub or GitLab or an internal Git farm rather, they will have different features and capabilities, but you're still using Git, so the Git commands don't change. So it doesn't really matter which platform you're using. If you are comfortable with Git, it should be a pretty low learning curve. And Git isn't that scary. There's the get your cheat sheet. There's a few base commands, and once you start really getting the hang of it, that's when you start to feel like a wizard. Like it's hard to go back to uh, the WYSIWYG for me sometimes because I think, no, I've mastered the science of the Git. The other biggie on here, trailing white space. That's something to watch out for in Markdown, whatever you're using. You want to make sure that you don't have any trailing white spaces at the end of your sentences, or at the end of like a paragraph, and also within um, links, build links, or so if you have a heading and you say your heading title has a white space at the end, and then you try to link to that heading later, and you don't include the white space in the reference that you make to that heading, then it's not going to match it. And I'm not sure if it's universal, but I've had it happen in several tools. So make sure just to have configure your editor that you're using to trim white space, stuff like that. There's quick ways that you can get past that. Do a quick check. Okay. So, oh no, that's what I meant to say on the other slide too. I threw that cheat sheet in. Oh no, now what? So there are some emergency commands that you should know and add to your cheat sheet. Um, find your lost commits, git stash. I don't, that's always was one I was uncomfortable with at the beginning. But really that just means that you have changes that you've made that you aren't ready to commit, but you need to switch a branch. You can stash your changes by running git stash. You can switch to the other branch to do what it is you need to do, and then go back and git stash pop to restore the changes that you had stashed. Um, start over from main. You can do the git reset hard, and that will reset the branch you're on to match main. It's kind of the same thing as just going back to main and making a fresh branch. So, and then undo your last commit, and that will create a git revert head will create a new undo commit so that you continue to move forward in history. And it will just show that you have a new commit that is restoring back to what you had before. Okay, the learning curve. Let's see. Okay, we're just two or three more slides here. So if you are transitioning into Docs code and you start a new job, or you start, or you're deploying a new tool, what really you would expect is it should take you about a week to the first week you're just going to be constantly checking your cheat sheet, constantly looking up what's the next thing I do, what's the next command to push this or merge this. Um, by the end of the first month, though, I would expect that you are getting comfortable. You're not panicking anymore. And you might even be able to guide a new teammate by the end of the first month on some of the basic commands and understanding, getting their footing. By the end of the first quarter, you are basically a pro. You're understanding what you're doing, and you're figuring, and you're thinking to yourself, why am I doing it this way? And you're looking for new and better ways, maybe to do the basic commands that you've learned. And then by 6 months, it's muscle memory. So not too bad. If you are looking for a new job, like a lot of us are, I left AWS because I was a victim to their um, mass redesign of their organization. The Some of the questions that you might want to ask to a company that is working in Docs code, that will show that you understand it, and that will also give you some insight into how they work and to maybe even their culture. Ask how long it takes for their builds from the time you merge to the time it goes live. At Amazon, we had build times over an hour. So you would sit and wait, and you wouldn't see it out there, and everybody would be asking you, when's it going to be live? And then if something was wrong and you had to, once it was live and you had to redo it, then I would take as long as it took to fix it and build it again. Um, what's your review process for documentation changes? So, that gives you some insight into how they work together, how they trust each other. Do you have peer reviews? Um, or are you trusted to merge your own work? Uh, Previewing changes before they go live. That's kind of like base stakes there. But if they don't have something like that, you're probably going to have to, figure something out on your own to be able to preview them. But um, the big thing is your stakeholder review. Where can you stage the docs that they can see them that's not on your local computer? Because you can always build it locally on your computer, but you can't give that link to somebody else. So, uh, and then is the docs repo separate from the code repo, or do we work in the same one? And that's just something I touched on a little bit earlier. Okay. That's it. So these are some resources I included here. The bringing another bad word in again, but that's actually a real tool that a lot of people have recommended to me. So I did include it here because it has a lot of fixes that people depend on every day. There's books, there's guides, and if you want to learn more about anything I talked about here, you can go to my blog at jillshaheen.com there and filter on the Git tag on my blog posts, and you'll see the series that inspired this presentation. Um, I can certainly make the slides available to you as well if you would like. But that's all I have for you today. Any questions?